I hope I have a reputation of being a free trader, and I think as time goes on, I'm in a minority in the Congress on that point, and maybe in a minority among the country as a whole. But I wish our country would learn some lessons from the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 that was supposed to help protect American agriculture and industry. And I think it had a great deal to do with the Great Depression that followed on very quickly. And I think we've learned since the Second World War that free trade has lifted millions of people out of poverty. I think I've read where free trade and capitalism together has probably reduced since in the last 60 years the world poverty rate is defined in different countries in different ways, but has reduced it from 50% down to about 10%. Now, trade tools like the General System of Preferences, or GSP, and AGOA are developing programs that also reduce costs for American consumers by lowering tariffs, just like free trade agreements do. That is why in 2020, when GSP was set to expire, I introduced legislation to extend it through April 2022. More recently, I'm glad to see the House pass the reauthorization of GSP out of their committee. I support this committee working together to finally pass GSP reauthorization and reauthorize AGOA before it expires. So my questions are to Mr. Lisicum. Do you think that reauthorizing GSP and AGOA can reverse the trend of China outcompeting the United States in investments in Africa?
Thank you, Senator. I think it's a decent start. I'll put it that way. The fact is that, as we all know, these programs are somewhat limited by design. And they don't provide the type of certainty, the type of comprehensiveness that a broader trade agreement would provide. While, as we've discussed here today, the Chinese government is actively seeking more than just a bit of trade preference access in these same areas, whether it is the RCEP agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or other trade agreements that the Chinese government is pursuing, whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative, which of course is investing in these places, or just simply bilateral investment. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the Chinese government, Chinese businesses are investing heavily in these places. So yes, of course, providing duty-free access via GSP, AGOA, other preference programs, doing it on a longer-term basis is good and fine, and as I've said, we should do it, but we definitely need a lot more than just that.
Could you speak to how GSP can move supply chains away from China?
Certainly, Senator. As I said previously, the fact is that China is a huge manufacturing nation. There's no doubt about that. And the fact they will have certain economies of scale that are very hard to defeat, even with U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. So preference programs give beneficiary countries and producers in those regions a leg up and make them far more competitive, particularly when you're talking about certain goods that are subject to very high tariffs in the United States otherwise. When you're talking a few percentage points, well, that's maybe not a big deal, but 10, 20, 30% can be an insurmountable barrier for GSP and AGOA beneficiaries without that preferential market access when it comes to competing with a behemoth like China.
And my last question to you, are there other mechanisms Congress could include in GSP to encourage compliance on issues such as intellectual property rights outside the threat of removal or limitation on the participating country?
Thank you, Senator. I'll start with the general disclaimer that adding too many conditions or too onerous of conditions to these preference programs can eliminate their utility entirely. If companies can't qualify, if the conditions are too intense, well, then you're not going to get much trade, and then all of the benefits we've talked about today just simply won't materialize. That said, I think there should be more focus on company-specific actions and less on country-specific actions. Because when you punish a government for bad government behavior, well, then you end up with a lot of collateral damage. Tens of thousands of some of the poorest workers on the planet get punished for what their government did, perhaps even unbeknownst to them. So by focusing more on a company-specific level, you can target bad actors without throwing the baby out with the bathwater.